So I want to talk a little bit more about the character Constantine in the very famous play *The Seagull* by Chekhov, because he's a complicated person, obviously. Because in some ways you feel that he's a complete buffoon, and you want him to shut up. But there's an aspect of his artistic belief system, his ideology, that's that has a grain of truth. That's important, you know. And one of the things that he says, when he goes on one of his sort of annoying rants, is like, well, art is, the theater is trite and full of cliches. It needs to be taken down. I need to replace it with something new, And even though in the end, he proves himself to be a little bit hypocritical, in the fact that his own work becomes very banal in his efforts to try to go against the grain. What he's saying, I think what he's getting at, though, is what he's pointing out, the observation he's making, is objectively still very true. And I think the reason why is because over time, as I've discussed before, when you look at more contemporary things, or when you see literature move farther and farther into the sort of the contemporary territory, I guess, you start to see that there's an oversimplification in the style that seems to come from, and I could be wrong, but I get the sense it seems to come from the underlying premise, the belief that because, one, you're trying to appeal to what you could call the other guy, just the average guy, the average person, rather than all this sort of fluffy pomp and circumstance, all this stuff from the old days. It's like we're trying to seem more true to life. And number one, because of that, but we also feel that, number two, that we're aware that most people are not geniuses, right? That most people, the assumption that most people are in a range that we call average, and therefore there's an element of their own experiences that must be sort of unremarkable. And that the writers may not be thinking that consciously, but that might play into the banality that tends to be the result of trying to mirror real life too much, rather than trying to find many things as you can within reality, because there's so much there, that you can't necessarily underestimate what human beings are capable of, or what, you don't really know exactly what people are thinking about, what's going on in their lives, but you have to look for the things that really are going to count. And that's where cliches tend to disappear, I think, when we approach things that way.